That's a question. How many of you had a great childhood? Raise your hands. Yeah. Well, I had an incredible childhood, and I've had an incredible life, and I'm incredibly thankful for it. I wake up every day thankful and grateful for the wonderful people in my life. My son, Ben, in the top left-hand corner there, my daughter, Emma, who's down in the bottom right-hand corner there, with my mum, Ro. This was a couple of weeks ago on her 80th birthday. She decided to do a 16,000-foot skydive. I'm thankful for the places I've worked and the places I've lived, some glorious, glorious towns and cities. And down the left-hand side, I'm incredibly grateful for the team I work with at Simplicity, all of whom could work for much more money in much more glamorous places, but choose to believe in our dream. My lucky life began here. Does anyone know where Sunnyvale is? Sunnyvale's in West Auckland. Sunnyvale's about as West Auckland as it gets. It's right between Henderson and Gleneden. And there is absolutely nothing remarkable about Sunnyvale except for the people who live in Sunnyvale. And I grew up here at 60 Seymour Road, and everything I learnt in life, I learnt there. This was my world. I learnt the values from home because, as Mike talked about, my mum and dad told me they loved me every single day. They told me they were incredibly proud of me every single day, particularly when my shit arrived, which I'll get onto in a minute. This scout hall right here was where I learnt the value, just so many life skills, lighting fires, camping, but also some discipline, getting on with people, concepts of hierarchy, amazing concepts of teamwork. Right here, this has all been built out in houses, but when I grew up, this was all orchards. And I learnt the value of right and wrong here, because the first time I did wrong and tried to nick peaches, I got shot in the arse by a salt gun. And I spent 3 weeks scratching the welts off. I learned the value of money here too, because on Seymour Road, we'd call it the working poor now. There was no extra money. There was nothing. There was no pocket money. So you had to go and earn it. So my paper round was all in here. It was actually 2 paper rounds. I had my own one, and then I took over my mate's when he gave it up. And I had to go back to the dairy up here and refill twice a morning to deliver 170 heralds in the morning. But that taught me the value of money, and it taught me to get up early in the morning and work hard. And then up here, just out of reach here, is the supermarket. And so before school, I delivered papers. Then after school, I went to the supermarket. And for 99 cents an hour, and you could employ kids for 99 cents an hour back in those days. And I was 12. You could employ 12-year-olds back then. I used to pack supermarket bags and pick up trolleys. I learned the value of education too, because I went to Kelston Boys, big rugby school. Was trying to get my dad to send a picture of what I looked like when I was at school, but man, I was the most un-Kelston Boys kid you could possibly imagine. I was a nerd, and I got the shit beaten out of me royally at school. But I learnt the value of education there, because down here in the industrial zone, there was a factory that used to assemble vending machines, Coke machines, and I spent my entire holidays wire stripping. And if you're a kid and you get wires in a wire machine, you go click, 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 for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and you're doing that for $1.99. The reason I did it because it was $1.99. It's only 99 cents in the supermarket. But you learnt the value of education, because I looked at that clock, and I can still see that clock, and I decided, I'm not doing this for a living. I'm going to school, and I'm going to university, and I'm going to get a better job. And I learnt the value of entrepreneurialism here too, because up here was Henderson, the Henderson Industrial Zone. And me and my mate Eddie Grootgood, we used to get on a bike and put on our pannier bags, and we used to do this thing called scrounging. Because back in those days, the industrial factories, they used to have these jumbo bins, and they just throw stuff out. And so we would get that stuff. This was before, before Trade Me or anything. We used to get this stuff, pile it into our bags, take it home, and trade it. And the golden find for me was the sellotape factory. I worked out how to get into the sellotape factory's jumbo bin, and they used to throw out the seconds of sellotape. So they were about, 90% sticky, but 10% not sticky. Then I used to take it to Kelston Boys, and of course no one had any money, and sellotape was gold in those days. So we used to run this trading empire basically based around sellotape. And I can remember actually trading 3 rolls of yellow sellotape for my first copy of Playboy. And of course, within 6 months, I was the pawn king of Kelston Boys. The other great one we did was just up around here, there was the post office. Remember the days when telephones used to be installed by the post office? Yeah, and you used to only get 1 telephone, right, per house. There was those, those digital, the rotary dial ones. It was quite funny. I took my son into Motat the other day, and he saw one of those things for the first time, and he started pushing the buttons, trying to work it. But anyway, we worked out, Eddie Grootgood, my mate and I, we worked out that if we went to this telephone, actually they had a jumbo bin there and they threw stuff out, and we went in and talked to these guys, and they thought it was pretty cute with these 10, 11-year-old kids coming in. We used to take all these telephones and get a few vital parts from these guys, and we'd take it back to Eddie's place, and we would disassemble them and then reassemble them into phones, working phones. And so we set up for this whole area here, we basically ran an illegal operation installing extensions in people's houses. So basically it depended on whether we liked you or not. If we liked you, it was $10. If we didn't, it was $20 to install an extension. So back in those days when the post office said you could officially only have 1 phone, Eddie's house, which was down here, he had 11. And I had 6. But you learned the value of entrepreneurship. Once again, no pocket money. You had to do it all for yourself. And I learned the value of resilience because this was the pony club. And I couldn't afford a saddle, but I wanted to ride horses. And boy, you learn resilience when you climb up on the bareback riding a horse and learn how to bareback ride a horse by getting kicked off, falling off and so on. But my real resilience came here because my girlfriend Donna used to live just here. And I'd made enough money that I could buy a car. Did anyone know what a Fiat 500 used to look like? Little Bambinas. I bought one of those 500cc, man, go along Great North Road, pedal to the metal, 40 miles an hour. That was all I could ever get out of it. But what I used to do was for $5 in those days, I could go drive down here, pick up Donna, go to the cinemas. There's no cinemas in Henderson or West Auckland. They had to come into Queen Street. So for $5, you could drive in, $2 petrol. The tickets were $1 each, and $1 bought you an ice cream and popcorn. So I came back down here, and because I'd taken Donna out on a Saturday night, I got to drive Donna back past her house, down here, past my house, up round here, and right there at the back of the Sunnyvale Slot Car Club, the only truly private place in the whole of Sunnyvale. If you want to understand resilience, you try getting it on the back of a Fiat 500. I can tell you, persistence finally paid. That's why I do my yoga today. I'll tell you something about this place, folks, and I'm sure this was like the place where a lot of you lived. There's a lot of dignity here. There wasn't a lot of money, but there's a lot of love, and there was a lot of dignity, and there was a lot of caring. And I sort of learnt, as I grew up there, seeing what happened when people lost dignity. And they lost dignity because they didn't have enough money, and it often wasn't a lot. Very few people in this area had life insurance policies. So when the principal breadwinner died, the family was trapped in a social welfare net from then on. And there was a cycle of poverty that played itself out. So very early on I got this idea in my life that there was something about giving people dignity and giving them just a little bit more money that actually brought them a lot of dignity in life. So that was my glorious childhood. But everyone has their shit. I've attributed that to me because I said it today. Everyone has their shit. Does anyone here not have shit? Everyone's got their shit. And it runs concurrently with the good stuff too. And here was my shit. I'd never been on a plane, and then one time my parents decided to send me to England to live there for a year with my grandparents. Actually, what it turned out to be was a gift from my mother to my grandmother, because my grandmother had disowned my mother for emigrating to New Zealand. So she thought that she would give up her most valuable prize, her son, to her for a year. So I went over to England, and I can't talk about it still, but something happened, and I ended up stuttering. And I still have it. When you see me after this and you talk to me, you'll notice it, because I'm going to tell you a trick. Sometimes when you talk to me, I'll seem a little distant, and it's almost like I'm not quite engaged in the conversation. What I'm doing is thinking 3 or 4 sentences ahead. I'm imagining what our conversation will be because I know the words I'm going to trip up on, and then I have to talk my way around those words. So I'm forever trying to work out. That's why I will so often guide conversations. That's why I will ask you 9 questions for every one that you will ask me, because I want to control the conversation so I don't stutter. The stuttering affects 45,000 Kiwis. It's a lot, huh? 1 in 100 people. 4 boys for every girl. No one knows why. There's no known cause or no known cure. It is a mystery to science. We do know that intervention works if it's done early enough. And I had a lot of speech therapy when I came back from England, and that helped. There's a lot of famous stutterers in the world. George VI, I had to use the column first because it was a treat for the ladies. I didn't want to show the real one. Joe Biden, Winston Churchill, and all of these actors who you would imagine wouldn't stutter. Some of them are really chronic stutterers. All of these people are known and confessed stutterers. And I think the interesting thing about it, I think of all the actors, funny enough, Bruce Willis said it all. He said, look, he thought I was handicapped. I couldn't talk at all. I still stutter around some people now, and I do. And when I came back, and amongst this wonderful childhood that I was having, I actually couldn't speak. Literally couldn't speak. And I wasn't able to speak for about 11 years. By not speaking, I mean I could actually average about 1 word a minute. So there's no point having a conversation. So when I was delivering my papers, I was delivering them in silence. When I was doing the supermarket trolleys, it was in silence. When I was a scout, I basically said nothing. I was the quietest person. And when you're a stutterer, basically 3 things really scare the hell out of you. The first is telephones. Unable to use a telephone. You know, a lot of people slag off social media right now. For the 45,000 stutterers out there, social media is a godsend. Because when I was a kid, the only way you could communicate was picking up the phone. And I couldn't use the phone. I couldn't make an outbound call. And my parents used to have this, we just had this thing going. They'd phone up, I'd ask a question, 1 tap for yes, 2 taps for no. That's how I communicated on the phone. So I certainly couldn't ask a girl out. Impossible. So it just, just couldn't happen. Just didn't happen. I want to comfort you by knowing that I've made up for that now. But, and the third thing was public speaking. Who here is scared of public speaking? Huh? It's the #1 fear. If you think it's scary for you, imagine what it's scary for people like me. And yet, a miracle happened. I talked about that early intervention. One of the early interventions my speech therapist said is, I want you to give a speech at school. And that was about the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. And I spent 3 weeks preparing for it. My mother spent a week with me crying on her shoulder every night saying, I don't want to do this, don't want to do this. But my speech therapist was insistent that I did. And I can still remember the day at Bruce McLaren Intermediate, standing up at the speech competition in the rounds, and I stood up with a prepared speech, and I opened my mouth, and I never stuttered again on stage. It was a miracle. I genuinely don't know what happened. So now when I'm on stage, I don't stutter. I can say any word, anti-disestablishmentarianism, any word we want. I don't stutter. But as soon as I step off that stage, I'll stutter. Crazy, eh? So my journey So there's one other thing about that getting up on stage is, for me, I think some people think that it's an ego trip, being up on stage and centre of attention and being in the press and so on. Actually, for me, it's a very different emotion. It's a freedom. It releases me from the shackles of everyday communication. So my journey, and Simplicity's journey, actually begins and starts at 60 Seymour Road. For me, it's the personal dignity of actually making a difference and doing something amazing with an incredible team. And if we end up doing what we want to do, it will end up making a difference to the lives of people in Sunnyvale who just need a little bit more money and a little bit more dignity to give them the choices in life that they deserve. And so I'll finish with just a wonderful coincidence. Today is the day that we've just hit $200 million under management, and we give 15% of our management fee away to charity. We're a non-profit owned by a charity. And I noticed that Age Concern's mantra really was dignity in retirement, and that happens to be exactly what our mantra is as well. So I spoke to the trustees last night. I'm delighted to say that the Simplicity Charitable Trust will be giving $5,000 to Age Concern. That's what we do at Simplicity. We celebrate success by giving money away. That's great. So that's my story. Thank you.